Okay, we all know it, right? Litecoin did have a better time. It went pretty much straight down in the last few months. But is this maybe the time to be greedy when others are fearful? Because in the end, the game is about buying low and selling high, right? And currently we are definitely pretty low. Now in this video, we're going to look at data. We are going to look at fundamentals. We are also going to look at relative valuations, as in how is LTC doing relative to Bitcoin, relative to Ethereum, relative to the entire altcoin market. And last but not least, we are going to discuss a trading strategy of how we can time Litecoin. So there's a lot of things to talk about. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Hi, so this is the problem with Litecoin. It's the volatility, right? Since May of last year, we have seen a drop of more than 80%. But the thing is, we've seen this in the past as well, right? This is not the very first time. In the crypto winter of 2018, we have seen even worse, a drop of more than 90%. And so should we simply just buy when everything is depressed and then take advantage of these intermediate rallies that can be more than 5x, right? Plus 450%. Or when we look here, since the Corona crash, almost 1000%. Now the thing with crypto is you always have to look at risk versus reward, and you have to look at relative performance, because cryptocurrencies, they tend to move in the same direction at the same time. Meaning when we've got a peak in the Bitcoin valuation or in the Ethereum valuation, very often the altcoins, they also peak. So it's probably no news to you, but simply to make this clear again, right? When we look here at the peak in Litecoin in December of 2017, this is also where Bitcoin peaked. When we go a bit more recent here to the peak in May of 2021, we can also see Bitcoin relatively elevated. So the general direction of cryptocurrencies is pretty similar. Now, since cryptocurrencies tend to move in the same direction, what's really important is relative performance. Because arguably, Litecoin is more risky than Bitcoin. It's smaller than Bitcoin in market cap. It's being less adopted by institutional investors, at least right now. So that means we should expect an outperformance of Litecoin versus Bitcoin versus Ethereum, and ideally also within the overall altcoin market. Now, do we see this with LTC? Let's have a look. This here is the LTC price divided by the Bitcoin price. So now we are not looking at Litecoin in US dollars. Now we are looking at Litecoin in Bitcoin. And since inception, we've unfortunately got an underperformance, quite a massive underperformance, 84% roughly. This underperformance isn't a straight line, right? We do have our temporary rallies, massive rallies actually, almost 600% here. But still, you take on all of this volatility to then in the end come out as a loser. And this trend here continues for quite a while already, right? This is 164 weeks. We are now pretty much at an all-time low relative to Bitcoin. Now, what about when we look at this relative to Ethereum, right? Ethereum could be regarded as the major altcoin, the largest of the alts. Unfortunately, the chart doesn't look that different. We are not at an all-time low, but still the general underperformance versus ETH is 90% roughly. And this is a long-term chart, right? This starts in May of 2016. Now, I find this pretty fascinating because even though we've got all of this underperformance, we still see Litecoin at market rank 19. So it's in the top 20 cryptocurrencies in terms of market cap. And a lot of those larger cryptocurrencies, they are not even risk-on assets, right? They are stable coins. We've got Tether in here. We've got USDC in here. We've got BUSD in here. We've also got DAI in here. Wrapped Bitcoin is just another version of Bitcoin. So we've got 4 stable coins. We've got 1 copy of Bitcoin, so to speak. So without those, Litecoin would already be at market rank 14. So it's a really, really large cap, but still, even though it underperformed by that much, it's still a major player within crypto. Now, what about the relative performance to Total 3? So this is now Litecoin, but not the Litecoin price, the Litecoin market cap divided by the altcoin market cap. So that's what Total 3 is measuring. Total 3 is the cryptocurrency market cap minus Bitcoin's market cap and minus Ethereum's market cap. So we can now compare market caps to one another, see if Litecoin is performing relatively okay to other altcoins. And of course, the answer here is not that different. We are looking at an underperformance of 94% even. Now, why is the underperformance here even higher than versus Bitcoin and Ethereum? It's because Bitcoin's dominance went down historically. In the early days, almost all of crypto was Bitcoin. Nowadays, it's only roughly 40%. So 20% is in Ethereum, 40% is in Bitcoin, the rest is in altcoins. So the altcoins in general have grown quite a bit, not so much so for Litecoin. Now this all looks pretty dark, right? Why should we invest in Litecoin when the risk versus reward doesn't look that great if we don't get the outperformance over the long term? One reason to potentially still get into Litecoin is the high volatility. So as we've already seen, right, the price goes up and down a lot. And so maybe, at least in US dollar terms, we can take advantage of these massive rallies if we simply find a way to somewhat time this. And here's where the simulation of buying and selling an asset comes into play. I've done a backtest. I've done several backtests, trying to find what's the best moving average for Litecoin. So here's how this works. The idea is you want to be outside of the market when the price is below the moving average. So you're not losing when general momentum is negative. You avoid these kinds of losses. On the other hand, you want to be in the market when the price is above the moving average. So you take all of those profits along the way, 175% in less than 6 months. Then again, you exit the market and you're basically effectively riding those waves. So this seems to be a pretty nice strategy. I've done this backtest for several different altcoins. And what's important here is we have to find out what's actually the best moving average duration. So you can decide, should we take maybe the 80-day moving average? Should we maybe take the 60-day moving average? Should we maybe take something rather short-term, 25-day, and then have potentially more failed signals, but we also exit way earlier when things turn around? What's the best, at least historically speaking? Because what historically worked well might also work in the future. And so I want to show you this Excel sheet over here that you can, by the way, download at thebitcoinstrategy.com. Link is in the video description. The sheet starts in July of 2014, goes all the way to today, the 27th of May of 2022. And in here, we can define some parameters. What's our initial starting capital? So let's maybe make this $1,000. How much do we charge for trading fees? So are you trading this actively on Binance, for example, where you have roughly 0.1% fees? And then do we want to bet on rising prices and in addition also on falling prices? Or do we want to be maybe completely in cash when the price is below the moving average, right? Because that's another thing. Do we want to bet on falling prices here, or do we want to just stay passive, be in cash, and maybe look for other opportunities? Both are viable options. Let's maybe run the backtest by simply being in cash. So let's zoom out over here and iterate over the simple and exponential moving average. The Excel sheet macro is now running the calculations, which does take a little bit of time because it's quite a bit of numbers to crunch over here, but there we go. Let's look at these results in chart form. So this is the best of the charts, and we can see sometimes our portfolio line here is completely flat, right? So Litecoin is in white over here, the portfolio line is in green, and sometimes we are just in cash, so nothing happens to our capital. Sometimes we follow the price movement. Now this here is a linear scale, right? We just see 50K deltas. We can also look at this in a logarithmic chart. So this now is at 10x from one another. So we can see the differences that happened here also in the early days. So the outperformance is not super constant. We are sometimes above, sometimes just following the price, sometimes even buying and holding would have outperformed. But over the very long term, we see way less volatility, right? The drops from top to bottom are way smaller. And because of that, we tend to gain more over the long term. So $1,000 would have given us a final result of more than 100K. So it's roughly a 10x different to just buying and holding Litecoin over the same time period. So what kind of moving average has been used here? You can see it here in the title, the 27-day moving average. So let's look at all of those results here. On the x-axis, we've got the duration of the moving average in days. In black, we see buying and holding. How much would we have gotten if we just bought and held Litecoin? So that's 37%. And then here on the y-axis, we see the annualized performance of the trading strategy according to the moving average duration. So when taking any duration that's at least above 6 days, with a simple moving average, we would have always outperformed buying and holding. For the exponential moving average, the minimum duration is around 11 days. Now, when we look at the best moving average durations, right, I've taken the 27-day over here. We could also take the 48-day. There's not too much difference. Let's actually look at this. So let's change this to 48 days. Let's look at the chart. This is what we get. We do see periods of sideways movements that are a bit longer. So the price tends to fluctuate around the moving average a bit less, but the final end result is pretty much comparable. So let's switch back to our Litecoin chart and look at both of those simple moving averages. So the 27-day and the 48-day. Currently, since we are falling that massively, we should definitely be outside of Litecoin. That being said though, if we simply go sideways for a while, this might turn around. But this is the idea of it all, right? The idea is to go with the flow, to go with momentum. The trend is your friend. The trend is currently moving downwards. And so even though we don't pick up the best, lowest value, right, when times tend to rise, we might not buy exactly here on the 19th of July. We are waiting for the price to somewhat recover by like 20% before we enter. Even though there is some lag over here, over the very long term, this strategy tends to outperform. And so this is simply how I see this, right? Both on the long term, holding Litecoin over Bitcoin or Ethereum is probably not the best idea. It hasn't been historically, and I would be surprised if that suddenly shifts around. And in the short term, it's not that different. We want to go with momentum. Historically, this works. And right now, we still have quite a bit of way to go, maybe up to the $85 mark or so, until this can turn around, or alternatively, we have to go sideways for several weeks from here. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, don't forget to subscribe because I do publish videos regularly. You might also consider joining our public Telegram group. That's to be found at Bitcoin Strategy Channel. Simply search for that within the Telegram app. Last but not least, I've done a lot of these kinds of backtests for different altcoins. I've even set up an alerts channel for Telegram that messages us whenever important moving averages get crossed. All of that can be found at the premium membership. So more details around this can be found in this video. Feel free to check that out. See you in that video, and thanks for watching this one. Bye bye.